Let me ask you something, and I want you to search your soul before you answer. Who taught you to hate your black skin? Who taught you to feel ashamed of the color that the sun kisses with honor? Who whispered into your ears that your natural hair was unprofessional, your wide nose unattractive, and your full lips too loud? It wasn't God. It wasn't nature. It wasn't truth. It was a system, a calculated, strategic, and deliberate system. A system that profits when you think you're less than what you are. A system that fears the day you wake up and realize you are more than enough. From the first day you entered a classroom, what did the history books teach you? That civilization began with them. That greatness wore a pale face. That intelligence had a British accent. That power sat in a White House. But what did they not teach you? They didn't teach you about the African kingdoms that thrived with gold, science, and architecture before Europe even rose from the Dark Ages. They didn't show you images of scholars in Timbuktu or the mathematicians of Egypt who measured the stars before Galileo was born. They erased your royalty and painted your ancestry with chains. They handed you a mirror and distorted the reflection. So now when you look at your brother, you see a threat instead of a partner. When you look at your sister, you see a burden instead of a queen. When you look at yourself, you see a problem instead of a promise. But I'm here to tell you that mirror was never yours to begin with. You are not ugly. You are the image of resilience. You are not inferior. You are the descendant of warriors. You are not hopeless. You are the dream that survived oceans, oppression, and odds. So the question is no longer who taught you to hate your black skin. We know who did. The real question now is, when will you unlearn the lie? Because once you do, the chains fall. Once you do, the begging stops. Once you do, you don't need validation. Because you walk in with your head high, knowing the truth. You are the storm they hoped would never rise. So don't bleach your skin to fit their fantasy. Don't hide your roots to blend with their norms. Don't shrink your voice so they feel more comfortable. Educate yourself. Elevate yourself. Empower your people. Your skin is not a stain, it's a statement. And the moment you love it unapologetically, that's the moment you become free. The most dangerous form of slavery is not the one that shackles your hands or chains your feet. It's the kind that captures your mind. Physical bondage can be broken with force or escape, but mental slavery, that is a prison so deep, so quiet, so invisible that many live their whole lives inside it without even realizing they're not free. Mental slavery doesn't need a whip or a master. It only needs a lie repeated long enough to become belief. And for generations, those lies have been planted deep in the minds of black people. Lies about worth, lies about beauty, lies about intelligence, capability, and destiny. It starts when a child begins to absorb the world around them. When every image of success they see has a white face. When every hero they read about in school is a white man. When the only time blackness is shown, it is tied to struggle, pain, violence, or servitude. That child begins to form conclusions without ever being told directly. They begin to think, if I want to be loved, I must be less like me and more like them? That's not education. That's indoctrination. That's not history. That's a calculated erasure of truth to maintain control. And once that child believes the lie, they carry it forward into adulthood. They doubt themselves in boardrooms. They second-guess their ideas in classrooms. They hesitate to lead. They apologize for existing too loudly. They internalize oppression and mistake silence for safety. They've been told in subtle and loud ways that to be black is to be less beautiful, less intelligent, less capable. So they shrink themselves, they bleach their skin, they straighten their hair, they soften their voices. All because the system didn't just colonize land, it colonized their minds. And the system is clever. It doesn't have to oppress you physically if it can get you to oppress yourself. If it can make you think you are not worthy, it doesn't have to deny you opportunities. You'll start to deny yourself. If it can make you believe your brother is your enemy, it doesn't have to divide you. You'll do that yourself. If it can make you hate your reflection, it doesn't have to change the world. It only has to keep you from trying. That's the genius of mental slavery. It turns the oppressed into their own jailers. This mental conditioning is passed down like inheritance. A mother who grew up ashamed of her natural hair teaches her daughter to tame it, hide it, straighten it. A father who was taught to fear white authority teaches his son to never act out, to always be careful, to stay in line, not because he's weak, but because he's trying to protect his child in a world that punishes confidence when it comes in black skin. This is not failure, this is survival. But survival isn't freedom. And the longer we confuse the two, the longer we stay stuck. Breaking free from mental slavery means asking uncomfortable questions. Who benefits from your self-doubt? Who profits when you hate your skin? Who gains when you reject your heritage, your history, your roots? The answer is never you. The answer is always the system. The system thrives when you are divided from each other and from yourself. It survives when you believe that white is better, closer to perfect, closer to God. But that is a lie. And it is your job to recognize it, challenge it, and replace it with truth. You are not the descendant of slaves. You are the descendant of enslaved people. People who were captured, stripped of language, culture, and name, and still survive. That blood runs through you. That strength is in your bones. You don't come from weakness. You come from power that terrified empires, from brilliance that built pyramids before Europe even had clean water, from warriors, kings, queens, and scholars whose names they never taught you. Because if you knew them, you might begin to know yourself. And when you know yourself, truly know yourself, you become unshackled. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, love yourself differently. You no longer see blackness as something to escape, but something to embrace. You stop trying to fit into a world not made for you and start building your own. You stop apologizing and start leading. You stop surviving and start thriving. That is what they fear. Not your anger, but your awakening. Not your fist, but your mind. Not your rebellion, but your pride. Mental slavery doesn't end the day you learn the truth. It ends the day you believe it. And belief requires unlearning years, decades of lies. It requires community, conversation, healing, and courage. But it is possible. Every time a black child is taught their true history, a chain breaks. Every time a black person says, I love my skin, my hair, my voice, another wall falls. Every time a community supports its own, educates its own, and uplifts its own, the system begins to tremble. Because mental freedom is the first revolution, and once that revolution begins, it cannot be stopped. So never underestimate the power of the mind. It can be your prison or your passport. It can keep you broken or make you whole. And when you decide that you will no longer be ashamed of who you are, when you declare that your blackness is not a curse but a crown, then no force on this earth can hold you back. Because a free mind rooted in truth and pride is the most unstoppable thing in the world. Reclaiming and embracing African identity is not just an emotional journey. It is a revolutionary act. It is the first step toward true freedom. When a people have been stripped of their history, their culture, their language, and their dignity, the path to restoration must begin with rediscovery. Pride in one's heritage is not vanity. It is a form of resistance. It is how you reclaim the power that was taken, the narrative that was twisted, and the beauty that was denied. Without pride in where you come from, you will forever chase the illusion of belonging in a world that was not built for you. You will measure your worth by someone else's standards and hate yourself for falling short of them. But when you begin to honor your roots, not as a burden, but as a badge of strength, you begin to walk in a power that no one can take from you. For centuries, African identity was attacked not just through violence, but through propaganda. Entire generations were taught to be ashamed of Africa. It was described as a jungle, a place of poverty, savagery, and backwardness. Its rich history erased, its brilliant minds ignored, its kingdoms hidden behind curtains of lies. Children of African descent were told that their past began with slavery, not with innovation, not with greatness, not with dignity. And if the story starts at the bottom, how can a child believe they belong at the top? That's how self-hate is seeded. That's how division is created. But that narrative is false, and every lie can be unlearned. Africa is not poor. It is plundered. It is not weak. It is targeted. It is not backward. It is feared. Because within Africa lies the foundation of human civilization. The first universities, the earliest mathematics, the beginnings of science, astronomy, philosophy, and spiritual thought. Its soil is rich with gold, diamonds, oil, and history. Its people are rich with talent, spirit, and resilience. To be of African descent is to inherit that legacy, and until you understand that, you will continue to believe you are disconnected from greatness. Embracing African identity means recognizing that blackness is not a monolith. It is a spectrum of cultures, languages, tribes, and traditions that span across continents and oceans. From Nigeria to Ghana, from Ethiopia to South Africa, from the Caribbean to the Americas, there are threads that connect us. The drumbeat, the rhythm, the fire in our speech, the soul in our music, the resistance in our movements. They all point back to the same source. When you embrace that identity, you stop asking for a seat at someone else's table. You start building your own. Pride in heritage also changes how you see yourself. You begin to realize that your features are not flaws, but fingerprints of a divine design. Your dark skin is not something to lighten. It is something to celebrate. It tells the story of ancestors who thrived under the sun. Your hair does not need to be tamed. It rises like the crowns of your people. Your name does not need to be Americanized. It carries the rhythm of your lineage. Everything about you that they tried to change was exactly what made you powerful. That's why they attacked it. And when you realize that, you stop hiding. You stop apologizing. You stop pretending. You begin to speak with authority. You begin to walk with purpose. You begin to live without fear. Because no longer are you trying to be accepted. You are trying to be authentic. And authenticity is freedom. It allows you to live without the burden of shame. It gives you clarity about your mission. It connects you to your people. And more importantly, It connects you to yourself. You cannot truly love yourself while rejecting your roots. You cannot build your future while ignoring your past. And you cannot be free until you embrace who you are, where you came from, and what you represent. This is not about exclusion. It's about restoration. It's about restoring a sense of self that was intentionally destroyed. It's about healing the wound of identity theft. It's about teaching the next generation that they are more than survivors. They are heirs to a kingdom of knowledge, culture, and strength. When a community begins to take pride in its heritage, everything changes. Education becomes deeper. Relationships become stronger. Businesses begin to thrive. Dreams become more daring. Because pride is not just a feeling. It is fuel. It is the foundation of confidence. It is what drives people to break limits and rewrite the rules. It is what tells a child, you are capable, before the world tells them, you are not. And when that seed is planted early, it grows into leadership, excellence, and impact. So we must teach our children who they truly are. Not just through books, but through example, through language, through music, through stories, through honoring the elders who kept the culture alive in silence, through celebrating the traditions that survived the crossing, the colonization, and the captivity. Because every dance, every word, every song is a piece of our power. This is the work of liberation. Not just protesting injustice, but rebuilding identity. Not just surviving oppression, but reclaiming self-worth. And it begins the moment you stop seeing your heritage as something to escape and start seeing it as something to be proud of. Your roots are not chains. They are wings. And when you spread them wide, no system, no lie, no force can hold you down. Because you will know deep in your bones that you were never meant to bow. You were born to rise. From the moment a child enters the world, they begin to absorb information. Not just through formal education, but through every image, word, and subtle message surrounding them. For black children, that absorption often includes a steady stream of narratives that tell them, directly or indirectly, that their skin, their features, and their culture are not enough. Media and education systems have worked hand in hand for generations to shape a version of reality where whiteness is the standard, and everything else is measured against it. This conditioning doesn't happen overnight. It is slow, persistent, and often invisible. And that's what makes it so dangerous. It doesn't need a loud voice to tell you that you're inferior. It whispers it into your subconscious until it becomes part of how you see yourself. When you open a textbook in most Western school systems, what do you see? You see the glorification of European explorers, the celebration of American founding fathers, and the triumph of empires that built wealth through colonization. Africa is rarely shown except as a continent of poverty, disease, and tribal conflict. The story of black people is often condensed into slavery, civil rights, and a few token achievements. Where are the histories of African civilizations that thrived for thousands of years? Where are the stories of African scientists, philosophers, and builders? Where are the lessons about how Africa influenced the world before Europe ever rose to power? Those lessons are missing, not by accident, but by design, because to leave them out is to control the self-image of an entire people. Media continues this work. Turn on the television, open a magazine, or scroll through social media. For years, black characters were sidekicks, villains, criminals, or comic relief. Black women were over-sexualized or portrayed as angry and unlovable. Black men were depicted as threats, not thinkers. Rarely were they shown as doctors, inventors, entrepreneurs, or leaders unless it was part of a token gesture. Beauty standards favored light skin, straight hair, and Eurocentric features. When this is the dominant narrative, it sends a powerful message. If you want to be accepted, admired, or successful, you must move away from your blackness. This is how the mind is colonized. A child who sees only white heroes begins to believe that heroism looks like someone else. A teenager who watches music videos filled with stereotypes begins to think those roles are all that are available to them. An adult who has never seen a black CEO on television may doubt their own potential to lead. These aren't just impressions. They are identities being shaped. And when an entire generation consumes the same distorted messages, a cycle of self-doubt, self-rejection, and self-limiting beliefs is created. The impact is profound. It shapes how people speak, how they dress, how they view success, and even how they treat each other. Internalized racism begins to take root. People begin to judge each other based on how white or acceptable they seem. Light skin is praised. African features are mocked. Natural hair is seen as unprofessional. Black excellence is sometimes questioned, not celebrated. These are not natural attitudes. They are learned behaviors taught by a system that benefits when black people are divided, distracted, and disconnected from their power. Education should be a tool of liberation, but too often it has been used as a weapon of control. It teaches you what to think, not how to think. It teaches you the history of your oppressors, but not your own. And when your identity is shaped by someone else's version of history, you are less likely to question that version, especially when it's all you've ever known. That's why curriculum reform is not just a political issue, it's a psychological one. When we demand that black history be taught in its full truth, we are not asking for special treatment. We are demanding wholeness. We are demanding that black children see themselves not as a footnote in someone else's story, but as the authors of their own. Media must also be held accountable. Representation matters, not as a trend, but as a truth. When black children see superheroes who look like them, when they hear accents that reflect their roots, when they witness stories that celebrate black love, black brilliance, and black joy, something shifts inside them. They begin to believe in possibilities that were once invisible. They begin to dream without limits. They begin to stand taller, speak louder, and walk with pride. This is not just entertainment, it is empowerment. We must also be mindful of what we consume and how we respond. We cannot rely solely on others to tell our stories or shape our images. We must take ownership of our narratives. We must support black authors, filmmakers, artists, and educators. We must correct lies when we hear them and challenge stereotypes when we see them. We must teach our children to think critically, to ask who created the content, who benefits from it, and what message it's really sending. This awareness is the beginning of freedom. True education doesn't start or end in a classroom. It starts in the home, in the community, and in the daily conversations we have about who we are and where we come from. It is reinforced through the books we read, the shows we watch, and the history we preserve. Every image, every lesson, every word either contributes to liberation or continues the lie. And it is our responsibility to choose wisely. The battle for black dignity is not just fought on the streets. It's fought in the mind. It is fought in the stories we tell, the pictures we paint, and the truths we uphold. When media and education conspire to erase a people's greatness, the only response is to reclaim it loudly, unapologetically. Because until the world sees blackness as beautiful, powerful, and sacred, and more importantly, until black people see it that way, the chains may be gone, but the system will still remain. The most profound transformation does not begin on the outside, it starts from within. True liberation, the kind that lasts through generations and fuels real change, begins when a person reclaims their sense of self-worth and decides boldly that they will no longer carry the burden of shame. For black people across the world, this act of self-liberation is revolutionary because it directly challenges centuries of conditioning designed to make them feel inferior. When you stop being ashamed of your blackness, your skin, your features, your history, your roots, you begin to move through the world differently. You are no longer seeking permission to exist. You are no longer apologizing for your voice. You begin to live with purpose, not fear. But make no mistake, unlearning shame is not an easy process. It takes time, honesty, and pain. It means confronting the lies you've believed your entire life. It means facing the ways you may have internalized racism, not because you were weak, but because the system was so strong and so subtle in how it programmed you. You start to notice how you judged your own people by unfair standards, how you once thought lighter skin was more beautiful, how you once believed success meant becoming less like yourself and more like someone else. This process is uncomfortable, but it is necessary, because healing begins with truth. And truth begins with courage. Once you begin to reclaim your pride, something remarkable happens. You start to stand taller, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You speak more clearly with power because you believe your words matter. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. You begin to set boundaries. You begin to dream beyond survival. You start to lead. This is not arrogance. It is confidence rooted in self-awareness. And confidence is contagious. When one person stands in their truth, it gives others permission to do the same. This is why mental liberation is the most dangerous threat to any oppressive system, because it doesn't require weapons or armies, it only requires awakening. Once the mind is free, everything else follows. A free mind begins to question the rules. A free mind stops asking for approval. A free mind sees beyond the lies of inferiority. A free mind begins to organize, educate, and uplift. That is why so much effort has been spent to keep black people mentally enslaved. If they remain ashamed of who they are, they will never realize what they're capable of. You see it in every major movement for black liberation. The moment people begin to take pride in their skin, their heritage, their community, they become unstoppable. They start businesses. They create art. They build schools. They change laws. They tell their own stories. This transformation doesn't come from the outside. It starts with a mindset shift. I am enough. I have nothing to be ashamed of. My people are strong. My history is rich. My future is mine to create. That belief alone can change the course of a life and a nation. Loving your blackness does not mean hating others. It means honoring the fullness of who you are without needing validation from outside sources. It means no longer asking, am I good enough? And instead declaring, I am powerful just as I am. It means resisting the urge to dilute your culture to fit in. It means showing up in spaces as your whole self, not a version that others deem acceptable. It means realizing that your presence is not a threat, it is a gift. This mindset shift is especially important for young people. Black youth are growing up in a world that still tries to tell them they are less than. They need to see examples of unshakable pride and dignity. They need to hear elders say, "You come from greatness. Never forget it." They need to learn their history not as a tragedy, but as a testimony of resilience. When a young black child understands their worth, they stop trying to imitate others and start becoming themselves. That's how cycles are broken. That's how legacies are built. We must create environments that nurture this transformation. Our homes must be places where blackness is celebrated, not silenced. Our schools must teach the truth, not just about oppression, but about achievement. Our media must reflect the beauty and brilliance of our communities. Our leaders must model integrity and pride. This is how we restore what was stolen. Not just land or labor, but identity, confidence, and hope. And even when the world still tries to tear you down, a free mind won't let it. Because once you truly know who you are, no insult, no discrimination, no rejection can define you. You may feel pain, but you won't feel shame. You may face resistance, but you won't doubt your worth. Because your strength will come from a place deeper than validation. It will come from history, from culture, from the blood of those who never gave up, even when the world tried to erase them. The revolution begins in the mirror. The moment you look at yourself and no longer wish to be anyone else. The moment you love what you see, not because the world told you to, but because you finally told yourself the truth. That moment is sacred. It is powerful. It is the seed from which greatness grows. And once that seed takes root, it will bloom into something no system of oppression can ever kill a free, proud, unstoppable soul.